Hey guys, after having watched all three seasons of The Bear, I wanted to talk about its trajectory as well as its ups and downs. Now let's get into it, chef. I find very few shows that can convince you to want to see the city that it's based in, like The Bear, and with all the buzz that I had heard, I wanted to check it out for myself. Season 1 was one of those things that once you hit play, you are enraptured in its aura. For starters, the chaotic energy of Season 1 was anxiety inducing and explosive, which really emulated perfectly how a restaurant vibe can be a lot of the time. Personally, I worked in a restaurant for many years, so I felt so vindicated when I first saw this show because it's very rare to find a form of media that can depict the hectic mess that a kitchen can feel like when it's busy. Like that 7:30 to 8 p.m. rush and how little mistakes just stack up, and I realized that I probably have PTSD from the stress of working in a restaurant. Now, to be fair, I was late to the hype train. I was put off and unfairly judged it as a show that I really wouldn't like, and I realized that that was shallow of me. But after literally like the first 10 minutes of watching it, I was absolutely glued to the TV and was so sad when I had to wait till the next day to continue my binge. One of the best parts of season 1 is that it perfectly blends tension and a sense of camaraderie between the cast, and does a great job of showing how in any given work environment, no matter how toxic, the crew can still get along and work towards both communal and individual goals. I think the quick cuts and sharp zooms along with the electric and pacey dialogue is what really hooked people on board. Season 2 though felt extremely different at first, because unlike season 1 where there clearly wasn't any foundation for the restaurant or our cast of characters, here there was a sense of grounding. And while at first it felt like a bit of whiplash with the change of pace, where the group development really wasn't the focus anymore, and more individual development or one-on-one development with sets of characters, but I felt this allowed for these characters to really grow into their own grooves and made each character more complex, with each episode feeling like it was dedicated to a different character since the season knew it was leading up to the opening of the new restaurant. I actually appreciated the episodes that were focused on individuality. Personally, I'm a sucker for character study style of storytelling. I felt it really helped to know each of these characters that much more, and it served the purpose of helping the audience understand these characters, where they come from, especially since the main focus of the show is showing them in a kitchen. They're much more than that. They're not just chefs, they're actual people with objectives and pasts and personal battles that they have to overcome. And because of the liberty of the show having that countdown to the opening of the restaurant, that freedom allows all of this, I guess you could say, grunt work to occur. And with a more intimate style of storytelling as opposed to the magnetic but scattered style of season 1, you actually have a pretty solid season of TV. Like I said, I love the comedy, the fantastic character building, and bonkers surprise with the episode Fishes. Yes, I am a Jamie Lee Curtis stan and love every and all performance she gives, and even if I wanted to put my bias aside, that episode is just fantastic, with absolutely everyone giving an out of this world performance, but all of it revolved around Dee Dee. Bob Odenkirk, John Brithnall, and Gillian Jacobs were all just insane and proved why they can capital A act. But even the finale of season 2, which was on par with Fishes, the grand opening night just left the perfect amount of angst and eagerness to make the audience hungry for season 3. So I was really excited for season 3, and again, they changed the direction and style. For starters, it's no secret that Jeremy Allen White and Ayo Debris have been amazing from the start of the show, and so for season 3, the season itself felt a bit more like build up more than anything, and in more ways than one, it felt like it was stalling for bigger things to come. I'd say season 3's biggest theme is probably dealing with uncertainty. And while I can see how some might say that season 3 spun its wheels a tad too much, in that nothing significant happened outside of Sugar's baby being born, I'd argue that when facing uncertainty, it's obvious there's gonna be more questions than answered by the end of the season. The restaurant's review and overall success was the stake at play on a communal level, but individually, Richie's character was amazing as always, and his back and forth with him having to deal with the fact that his ex was now getting remarried, and he had to accept that fact. It didn't help that everyone could see how distraught he was. His little daughter, who's still naive, was able to tell him how alone he was. Sid's stakes on the restaurant and having the uncertainty of what her future holds at this restaurant, along with potential opportunities. Carmen's battle with himself of worrying that he might have lost the person he loved because of his own actions. But what probably burdens him more is the idea that even if he tried to mend things with her, he most likely would have found a way to ruin it again. And so he fixates on literally every other problem than dealing with that. Hell, he even tackles the battle of quitting smoking, and he literally creates a system for a restaurant that seems just so unsustainable. Like, creating a new menu every single day sounds outrageous. And it's good juxtaposition that the only thing that's actually making a profit is the sandwich shop out back that's more old school and traditional, and very contrast to the high-end menu that Carmy wanted. In general, if you've watched the show, one of the biggest overarching themes of it is that it's talking about depression and the inability to move forward from your past. So this season I felt really reinforced that, in that it felt like these characters couldn't get out of a constant loop, and looking at it in that way, it really helped me appreciate the season a bit more. One of the downfalls of that though is that while on pen and paper it's great, when you translate it to TV, it doesn't really work out as well. And it makes it feel a little underwhelming because in a show like this, you never really know what you're gonna get out of the next episode. The show isn't an anthology, but the structure felt free flow enough that each episode could be talking about new things while still being in line with the overall narrative. Season 2 in particular really excelled in this regard, since whole episodes were dedicated to one character. But by the end of the episode, that character had completed the arc they started at the beginning of the episode. My favorites of these probably include Fish's and Richie's episode, with Marcus's episode coming in like third place. And this season did kinda do that, in that 2 of the episodes were Tina's past job hunt that was masterfully directed by Ayo Edebiri, and Sugar's episode that also brought back our beloved Donna. One of my bigger cons of the season though would have to be the levity of comedy. While I get it, comedy is subjective and all that, but the facts became more prominent in this season, much to my dismay, and I just find it that they weren't that funny. Outside of a few bits here and there that they have, it's just like every time they show up on screen, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be here for another 5 minutes to hear their corny dialogue that doesn't really add anything. I really feel like they became more prominent characters just to add more dead-end chuckles, to not let the show feel so dry, but I didn't like it at all. Luckily, Oliver Platt's character, Uncle Jimmy, is also here too, and I'm all for it. Every time he's on screen, he has a quip, but it feels earnest enough that it just always worked for me, and in general, his character was always such a delight to see. Sadly, the season finale was a bit lackluster for me, because I thought we were gonna address problems that we had already built up from the start of the season, but no, we had to have a the menu moment where we appreciated every single little detail, and I was watching the season finale and I was like, no way they're gonna stay this long on this. And I get it, the funeral dinner was very important, but I feel like because of how much screen time it took up, it couldn't tackle any of the other problems that we had already built up. For example, even Carmy going to see his nephew wasn't addressed. And I get it, the season's pace was much slower, so the tension was never really high. But I don't know, I was just really hoping that they would find a way to match the tone of the nail-biting ending of season 2. And that's the thing, the formula for The Bear was heavily reliant on the fact that people really liked the brand new approach for every single episode of season 2. But that doesn't really translate for season 3, because this season felt like it was trying to be strange for strange's sake. To be honest, the gloomy vibe really only works when the narrative earns it. It doesn't hit the way it wants if everyone is moody and sad. Really, the only one that you could say has earned this position is Richie, because while Carmy is sad and stuff, he's there because of his own actions. And while yes, Richie isn't a saint, we've seen much of his character arc and how he's grown. And most importantly, it was a surprise that something this bad as seeing his ex remarry happened to him because of how positive his character had become. That element of surprise that was vividly there in the first 2 seasons is no longer there. This forced vibe on the season kinda didn't let the story really progress, and at times it made it feel a bit stale. To me, episode 1 of this season was one of the stronger episodes because it felt hypnotic to say the least, with the score almost on like loop, and it served as a recap with surprisingly little dialogue, which is a rarity for this show. It honestly made me really excited for what came next because it was just a really solid reintroduction into the world. But pretty much after that episode, I started to realize that there's long periods, in particular towards the middle half of the season, that a lot of nothing was happening. As much as I loved the Tina episode that Ayo directed, I didn't really see what it added to the story of season 3. If the episode had been in season 2 where each character was being fleshed out more, I would have liked it much more. But that period of getting to know each of our main characters is kinda done now, so it felt a bit gratuitous despite how cute the episode was. And like I said before, depression has been a theme all show long, but it's been able to balance levity and character relations so good that it's earned its praise. The thing is, season 3 kinda doesn't have the sauce as it used to because it lets itself simmer too much on sadness. Carmy this season has not been really that great because while he hyperfixates on the progress of the restaurant and the meals that seem to lead him only towards bankruptcy, he also is suffering because he can't figure out how to deal with his love life. Marcus had such a strong story with his mom, and while yes, grievance is fair for the character, I just wish they had built up other stuff for Marcus to do, cause it kind of feels like without the storyline of his mom, he has devolved into a nothing character that's just alone now. And it's sad because Marcus was one of my favorite characters in season 2. Richie has been alone, even his daughter has said how he looks alone. So while the show allows the characters to feel the effects of solitude, it doesn't really give them anything else to do. And in a show that excels at speed and pacing, this harms the overall flow of the narrative. Luckily, it's compelling enough to make you want to keep watching, and it helps that by this point you already love these characters. And I'd also like to say, and it may sound contradicting, but I love miserable movies and TV shows. I really do, but it should serve a purpose, and this show, at least this season, didn't really convince me that it did. Hopefully I'm wrong, and the next season will prove me wrong. One of the more meta topics that the show has touched on from the beginning is how the 1% can't be really truly happy just because. And albeit in a more localized format, the show has juggled this idea where these characters that have wanted for so long the Bear restaurant to be open, now having that don't really seem all that happy, and in fact seem miserable despite having gotten what they wanted. Season 2 ended off on such an insane beat, like putting Carmy in a freezer, and it forced him to be with the quiet, and in a way it suffocated him because he has nothing else to do but think about his past. And ultimately, he blames Claire for preventing him from reaching his maximum potential, which, no, that's not the case. But the toll this breakup had on Carmy lasts the entirety of season 3 with literally no need of Claire's presence in the show. She basically devolved into a cameo in season 3. I think allowing him to think about his actions and past was necessary for his character to grow. My favorite example of this, and probably my favorite scene of all of season 3, is when Carmy confronts an abusive chef that we'd seen in flashbacks throughout the season. Joel McHale put in one of the most despicable performances I'd seen in a while. By far the best acting of Jeremy Allen White all season long, but the confrontation oozed with tension and fear and bravery, all balanced in such a tasteful way. You can literally see how this was very much like standing up to your bully that's like 10 feet tall, and despite the fact that he's earned his stripes as a chef and has proven to be a very good cook, it didn't matter. But the way that he tells Carmy that it was because of him that he's as good as he is and that he should be grateful was just so infuriating. Carmy's disbelief, I feel, resonates with the audience, and it makes you want to go like, are you so arrogant that you actually believe what you just said? And while ultimately this conversation belittled Carmy overall, it helped him close that chapter and helped him realize that he can tackle his past, and yeah, he may not always win, but he will survive, as well as gives him a newfound sense of direction. Honestly, The Bear is a compelling TV show with good character work, and I feel overall knows what it's trying to say. Despite the missteps that it had in season 3, I do genuinely believe it'll find its trail again and go back to being the strong drama that it has proven to be. And because of the questions that were left unanswered, there's so many directions the show could go in for the following season. But those are just my thoughts on the show so far. I'd appreciate a thumbs up, subscribe. My name's Anthony, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.